the 3rd of May 1791. A day like any other, except it wasn't a day like any other in Poland, because here, in the building behind me, the Royal Castle in Poland, the great Sejm of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth did something incredible. It adopted a new constitution. The agitation for the constitution, the desire for the constitution, had begun with the election of the new king, Stanislaw Augustus, at the Convocation Sejm of 1764. How this became necessary, how it was passed, and what it meant for Poland, we'll be finding out in this programme. I'm Nicholas Richardson, and this is Poland Daily History. I'm just leaving St. John's Cathedral here in Warsaw's Old Town. This is the cathedral to which the delegates to the Sejm, which passed the 3rd of May 1791 Constitution, came to give thanks, to sing a Te Deum to God for this marvellous event, this passing of the Constitution, a great event which brought to an end, so they hoped, the chaos which had been Polish governance in the 18th century. And they marched, processed, as you'll recall from the great Matejko painting, from the Royal Castle behind me, down this street, Świętojanska, and into the cathedral. They were full of optimism. The painting showed us that. They had great hopes for the future. At last, it seemed, Poland was going to enter a new golden age with proper constitutional arrangements, with the nobles under control, with toleration, with new freedoms for the townspeople, and new freedoms, at least a better status for the peasantry. So much optimism, such a great day. They were not to know, as we know, what was going to happen later. But it's important, as we stand here 200 years later, to think how important the Constitution was. Not just because of what happened on that day, but because of what happened after the second and third partitions of Poland, from 1795 until 1918, when Poland again emerged as an independent nation. The idea embodied in the Constitution, the idea embodied in that great painting we saw earlier, kept the Polish spirit alive. One of the many things which kept the Polish spirit alive, and something which is not to be underestimated nor taken for granted. So, the 3rd of May 1791, here on this street in Warsaw, they gave thanks for a great event. We'll find out what happened next. We left the old town as the members of the Sejm had left St. John's Cathedral, full of optimism for the future, with a new constitution, a new beginning. Unfortunately, that new constitution was only in life, only in effect, for essentially 18 months. The Russians ended their wars with the Swedes and the Turks, and Catherine looked at Poland and was astounded and angry that Poland was striking out on its own with a new constitution. This could not be allowed to happen. At the same time, those magnates for whom the restriction of their powers under the new constitution was something they still found unacceptable, an opportunity to appeal to Catherine for help. Together, they formed the Targowica Confederation and asked Catherine to come to their aid and do something. And what Catherine did, of course, with a large Russian army, was to invade Poland in the war of 1792 in defense of the Constitution. Unfortunately, Poland could not effectively respond. The Sejm immediately passed a law for an army of 100,000 people. Unfortunately, they could only manage 37,000. And although the army fought bravely, and under Kosciuszko and under Józef Poniatowski, they won a number of victories. It was to no avail. By July 1792, the Russian armies were on the outskirts of Warsaw. It became clear to the king that there was no option but to come to an agreement, eventually to accept that there was no more fighting to be done. And on the 24th of July 1792, as required by Empress Catherine, the king joined the Targowica Confederation. This was something which many people found impossible to believe. But the Polish army disintegrated, and that essentially brought to an end that phase of Poland's life. The king, having joined the Targowica Confederation, many supporters felt the game was up. They went into self-imposed exile. But the king, although he had not been able to save Poland, nor had the Targowica Confederation, and much to everybody's surprise, or their surprise at least, the Sejm at Grodno, which some people consider to be of not a valid Sejm, enacted what became the second partition of Poland. Then, under this partition, 1792, Poland lost a further 300,000 square kilometers of territory. 250,000 went to Russia, 50,000 went to Prussia, leaving a rump state of only 215,000 square kilometers. An amazing and very sad occurrence. That this, finally, Poland, with so much hope and optimism at the time of the passing of the 3rd of May Constitution, had, within 2 short years, been reduced to a rump state at the mercy of its neighbours. And of course, it's worth bearing in mind what was going on in Europe at this time and why Catherine and indeed the Prussians were so anti the Polish constitution. Let's not forget the French Revolution. For many people, these revolutions, these new constitutions, were seen as an attack on the Ancien regime. And there's no doubt that for Catherine, for Prussia, and even for the Habsburgs, revolution in Europe was a dangerous thing. And the idea that there should be this new state of Poland, this newly strong state, with a constitution based on what they saw as revolutionary principles, was just too much to bear. And so 1793 ended with the partition, the second partition of Poland. But, of course, the second partition of Poland wasn't quite the end. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. And the man who came on this occasion was Tadeusz Kościuszko, hero of the American Revolution, coming to Poland to try one last attempt to save his homeland. On the 24th of March, 1794, in Kraków, he declared what was to become known as the Kościuszko Revolution, or uprising. He sought to save Poland. On the 7th of May of that year, in Połaniec, he issued a declaration freeing the peasants and offering land to all those who fought in his insurrection. He tried hard, fought bravely, but despite victories in April, in Warsaw, Wilno, and the Battle of Rasławicka, ultimately, when Austria and Russia and Prussia joined, the uprising was doomed. Indeed, historians have often thought that it was doomed from the very beginning. But you can crush an army, you can overrun a country, but you can't crush a spirit. And I think that is what the Kościuszko uprising showed. This uncrushed spirit, despite the background of the 2 partitions of Poland, despite the disappointment over the constitution, not having brought the hoped-for golden age. The king, well, he abdicated in 1795 and went back to St. Petersburg, somewhere where he'd been as a young man, as a lover of Catherine the Great. He died 3 years later, in sadness, no doubt, that what had seemed so possible when he became king in 1764, what had seemed so possible on the 3rd of May 1791, when the Constitution was enacted, had, alas, a few short years later, turned to dust. And what did this mean for the rest of Europe? Of course, this great country, Poland, this great commonwealth, this great geographical country, disappearing, divided cynically between Austria, Prussia and Russia, which became themselves much stronger, had a profound impact on the future history of Europe. Indeed, Germany was to unite not, as some might have expected, under the Habsburgs, but under the far more militaristic Prussians. And as Russia and Prussia became stronger, more wars were inevitable. France's position all of a sudden became weaker. And thus began a chain of events which led to the outbreak of the First World War. And it's an ill wind that blows no good, because as a result of that, as a result of the disappearance of Poland, the geopolitical changes which brought us the First World War, they also brought us full circle, because at the end of the First World War, in 1918, Poland, after 123 years, re-emerged as an independent country. And while we're talking now about the Constitution of the 3rd of May 1791, which, if we take it as probably we can argue, but we can say that was probably Poland's third constitution, the current constitution of Poland is its 15th, the Constitution of 1997. And it's worth remarking that on the last year, the 100th year celebration of Poland's re-emergence as a state, the President of the Republic of Poland put forward some ideas about reforming the Constitution. Interesting to note then that history is alive today in Poland. This great constitutional argument, which gave us so much, promised so much, and in some ways delivered so little, is still alive with us today. And we can reflect on that and what the great achievement it was in 1791, and it is still living with us today, the idea of a constitution and its place in the nation's life.